On this Friday night, rolling back to the red zone. Tougher restrictions return to some Ontario regions.
We're staring down the barrel of another lockdown.
As Saskatchewan beefs up its battle.
It feels like COVID is crushing in from all sides.
The pandemic pressure. The Prime Minister promises to help provinces, but there's a catch. And have a merry pandemic.
I think Santa probably has immunity.
The new take on joy to the world.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with the pandemic. It's been a week of record-breaking numbers in many parts of this country, and the models show the cases of COVID-19 may only get worse. BC hit another record with 617 new infections. And today, Ontario announced it is lowering the thresholds for imposing tougher measures. The change means more regions will move into red alert mode. This is the most restrictive level, short of a lockdown. And today, Premier Doug Ford warned he won't hesitate to move the province in that direction again.
I will lock down quicker than you can blink your eyes, because my number one priority is to protect lives, protect the safety of every single person in Ontario.
Eric Sorensen reports on how Ontario is changing course to curb the rapid reach of the virus.
Not only is the pandemic hitting harder than in the spring, Canadians and government leaders have been more resistant to locking down this time. But with disturbing new forecasts of rising cases and hospitalizations comes a new tone from one Premier, Doug Ford.
Families should not, I repeat, not visit any other households or allow visitors to their homes. And please avoid social gatherings.
And there will be an impact on more restaurants and other businesses across the province. Ontario has changed the threshold for restrictions from 4 regions under intermediate and stringent measures to more than a dozen now deemed in the orange and red zones.
We're staring down the barrel of another lockdown. And I will not hesitate for a second if we have to go further.
From a low of fewer than 100 cases per day in August, a sharp rise this month to an average of more than 1,350 confirmed cases per day over the last week. Ontario's modelling consensus says that could rise to 6,500 per day by mid-December if left unchecked. A circuit breaker, a hard, brief lockdown to break the chains of transmission, could reduce the spread noticeably. But how far down the numbers go would depend on many factors: how severe the restrictions, how long they would last. The measures have to do more than bring case numbers down temporarily, say experts, or else they'll just go up again when the restrictions are lifted.
If something like circuit break or general lockdown is to be used, we've got to be crystal clear as to what the goals are. And if the goal is to secure testing, contact tracing, then we need to meet that goal.
A long, hard winter was always expected, but Canadians are tired of the pandemic, and their tolerance will be tested.
Which is better? Which is more tolerable? A series of lockdowns or one hard lockdown? Any strategy from the government down needs buy-in from the public. And so ultimately, this is always in the hands of the public. How much are we willing to restrict our average numbers of contacts?
In Ontario, the hope is to avoid a total lockdown, to keep schools open, give most businesses some flexibility, and see how things go as Christmas approaches. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
The prairie provinces are struggling to deal with rising COVID-19 cases. Manitoba and Alberta have already brought in tougher restrictions, and today Saskatchewan followed suit. But as Roberta Bell reports, not everyone feels the new rules go far enough.
I'm not going to sugarcoat the situation. It's not great, and it's been getting worse.
A bleak warning from Saskatchewan's health minister. With more than 1,400 active cases in the province, 81 of them new Friday. At the rate things are going, officials say the healthcare system will not be able to keep up.
What we feared what could happen is starting to happen, and we have a very unique opportunity right now to be able to flatten that curve again.
The minister says a slowdown is necessary to avoid a lockdown, announcing new measures under a public health order. Expanding the mask mandate from the 3 biggest cities to all communities with populations over 5,000. Limiting alcohol sales at restaurants and bars. Last call will be at 10 o'clock and people will have to finish their drinks by 11, and capping group fitness classes at 8 people.
We are watching what's happening in Alberta. We are watching what's happening in Manitoba. We are watching what's happening just south of the border to us. And it feels like COVID is crushing in from all sides.
After hearing the restrictions, a group of doctors who wrote a letter this week asking the province to clamp down say, unfortunately, the additional interventions announced today do not go far enough.
I'm terrified. And I think that is the word that I would use. I lose sleep at night. I worry about my children. I worry about my parents. I worry about my colleagues. We've seen this virus cripple healthcare systems across the world.
The business community is pleased there's no shutdown, but the president of Regina's Chamber of Commerce wants people to follow the rules. Saskatchewan's chief medical health officer says if we can't limit transmission, then we could see more restrictions coming in. These ones, though, will begin Monday and be in place until at least December 4th. Robin?
Roberta Bell in Regina. Thanks, Roberta. There are tighter measures in parts of Canada's north. Today, Nunavut confirmed its 4th case in a week. Prior to November 6th, it hadn't recorded a single infection. The territory is putting more restrictions on gatherings and non-essential travel in Iqaluit and the region of Kavalik. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has told the country's premiers they can count on Ottawa's help through the next phase of the pandemic. But the pledge comes with a caveat. As David Akin is here to tell us, that involves taking aggressive steps to stem the spread. David?
Well, Robin, on Tuesday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau challenged premiers to do more to meet the looming health crisis. And they responded. One premier after another this week announced new lockdowns and new restrictions. Now they need more federal help. Manitoba asked for and will get federal help to run some of its long-term care facilities.
The Canadian Red Cross is already on the ground assessing the situation and is working with local and provincial authorities to determine their specific needs.
Quebec, too, asked for and will get an extension on a federal program that helps that province with its long-term care facilities. But will the plans put in place by each premier be enough? Trudeau said it was not up to him to judge.
Those are questions that quite appropriately are to be asked by citizens in the provinces.
Meanwhile, more grim numbers. Now, more than 10,700 deaths in Canada from COVID-19 and an average daily new case count that is at 4,300 and curving upwards.
If we continue on the current pace, it is estimated that there will be over 10,000 cases daily by early December.
And without flattening that curve, the chance of a normal Christmas will disappear.
Right now, it's not looking good.
But the lockdowns needed to flatten that curve will inevitably cause economic harm. So, to ease that pain, Trudeau announced an additional $1.5 billion for skills training to help those who will need to find new jobs.
But we have to do our part to flatten the curve before it gets any worse.
And Ottawa will be asked to spend even more. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the premiers will meet in early December, where the provinces will press for permanent and significant increases in federal health transfers. Robin?
David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. For the first time since the November 3rd election, U.S. President Donald Trump has addressed the country about the worsening COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is predicting that within the next 4 weeks, deaths could climb as high as 282,000. As Jennifer Johnson reports, mayors and governors, even in conservative states, are now taking drastic measures to slow the spread.
With new cases of COVID-19 skyrocketing, U.S. President Donald Trump broke his silence to update Americans on Operation Warp Speed, the effort to get a vaccine to market fast.
We will work to secure an emergency use authorization, which should be coming down extremely soon, and my administration will then coordinate the distribution of the vaccine.
The virus is sweeping across America, including at the White House, where over 130 Secret Service members are either infected or in quarantine. Desperate state leaders, even in conservative states, are pleading for the public's help.
I've issued a mask mandate in Arkansas, but we want to increase compliance.
Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana are reporting a new positive case every 4 seconds. Chicago's mayor has issued a 30-day stay-at-home advisory starting Monday. COVID-19 positive nurses in North Dakota who are asymptomatic are being asked to return to work to treat infected patients.
This is kind of like standing on the beach and watching the hurricane slowly roll towards you.
In an interview with CBS this morning, the nation's top infectious disease expert says Americans have to be careful over the holiday season.
There is light at the end of the tunnel, so the message to the American people is please hang in there and implement the public health measures because help is on the way.
Bars in 11 California counties closing again. Disneyland shut down until 2021. Ivy League colleges have called off all winter sports. No more indoor eating for many Missouri restaurants.
We've been planning for carryout if we have to, but again, it's not sustainable for our overhead, our rent, our utilities.
President-elect Joe Biden's coronavirus task force is already working, but since President Trump hasn't conceded the election yet, Biden's team says it's being denied access to key planning with the Department of Health as it prepares a vaccination campaign starting as early as January. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
China has congratulated U.S. President-elect Joe Biden, one of the last countries to acknowledge his electoral victory over Donald Trump. During a press conference today, a foreign ministry spokesperson commended the Democratic candidate and his running mate, Kamala Harris. He gave no reason for China's delay, but said, quote, "We respect the choice of the American people." Under the Trump administration, the U.S.-China relationship reached its lowest point in decades. Biden promises to remain tough on Beijing, but seek a united front. A tense situation is unfolding in Montreal tonight. There's a large police operation underway near the offices of video game maker Ubisoft. It's located at a busy intersection, and police have cordoned off the area. They're asking people to stay away. Dan Spector is there for us tonight. Dan, what have you learned about the situation?
Well, Robin, it's a very busy intersection indeed here at Saint Viateur and Saint Laurent Boulevard, just steps away from the famous Saint Viateur bagel shop. It's a very bustling and busy neighborhood, and police have been sprawled out around here all afternoon. They have brought just about every unit you could think of. The SWAT team was here, the motorcycles were here, even the horses were here, an armored vehicle, and their attention all afternoon has been focused on Ubisoft. Now, what they've been doing is gradually ushering people out of the building. And this all began at around 1 o'clock when they got a call about a possible armed robbery. And the police came. People had been hiding inside. I spoke to the sister of one Ubisoft employee who said her sister had hidden in a conference room. Others hid on the roof because nobody knew exactly what level of threat they were facing. But meanwhile, police have been slowly and gradually sweeping the building and bringing people out. And what they've discovered is nothing. They found no threat. They have no suspect. So now the question is, who made this call and what is the thing that prompted this huge police presence? But as of now, no suspect and no threat, just for all of this police presence. Back to you, Robin.
Dan Spector, Montreal. Thanks, Dan. The toll of COVID-19 coming up, what healthcare workers are being forced to deal with now. Plus, Diwali with a dose of the pandemic.
Don't wait for the government to tell you what to do. Do the right thing now.
Calgary's mayor is encouraging people to take immediate action to contain the spread of COVID-19 before the Alberta government has to put more restrictions in place. 907 new cases were confirmed today in that province, the second highest daily count of the pandemic. Many of us have COVID-19 fatigue, but those on the front lines have a message. This disease isn't going away. Healthcare workers have the burden of taking care of the sick and in some cases, watching them die. But their own lives are also on the line. Here's Heather Yerkes-West.
Each night, it was a chance to say thank you, a noisy salute to the healthcare workers treating COVID-19 patients on the front lines. But 8 months into this pandemic, in the thick of a second wave, Calgary Dr. Joe Vipond doesn't hear those nightly tributes anymore.
And back in the spring, there was this feeling that all of society was behind us, that yes, you are endangering yourselves, but you know what? We're all willing to step up and play our part. And I think the harder part for us today is we no longer have that sense of solidarity with the rest of society.
Instead, doctors in several provinces feel at odds with policymakers who are now balancing economic concerns with the issues around public health.
We really have a recipe of, number one, psychological and emotional trauma, and number two, a risk of them getting sick or being quarantined.
According to the Canadian Institute for Health Information, more than 21,000 health workers were infected with COVID-19 during the country's first wave. 12 of those workers died. Since then, there have been another 915 infections among health workers in BC, more than 1,800 in Alberta, 69 in Saskatchewan, 2,096 in Ontario, and more than 7,000 in Quebec, where another 10 health workers have died.
Physicians are tired.
The Canadian Medical Association says it's time for the country to return to the mindset we had last spring.
We're 8 months into this pandemic, and Canadians are, on the whole, are tired of hearing about it. But the fact remains that this is a virus that kills people, and we're seeing that now.
And with hospitals in several parts of the country approaching capacity, the need for a fresh sense of solidarity has never been so great. Heather Yurex West, Global News, Calgary.
Elon Musk is questioning the accuracy of COVID-19 tests after testing positive and negative in the same day. The CEO of Tesla says something bogus is going on after claiming he was tested 4 times with different results. He tweeted, 2 tests came back negative, 2 came back positive. Same machine, same test, same nurse. Musk took rapid antigen tests yesterday and is now awaiting results from PCR tests, the ones most commonly used in Canada. He says he has symptoms of a typical cold. The Miami Marlins have hired the league's first female and first Asian American GM. It's believed Kim Ng is the first female GM for any major men's sports league in North America. The 51-year-old entered the baseball business as an intern in 1990. In a statement, she says, "It seemed unlikely a woman would lead a major league team, but I am dogged in the pursuit of my goals." Still ahead, a somber anniversary, 5 years after France's deadliest terror attack.
You're watching Global National.
The United Nations is warning the conflict in Ethiopia is on the verge of spiraling out of control. Government troops and forces loyal to insurgent leaders in the Tigray region have been fighting for the last 10 days. Hundreds of people have been killed and more than 14,000 others have fled to nearby Sudan.
Despite the severing of communications with Tigray, making it difficult to verify the extent of the damage so far, we've received reports from a variety of sources suggesting increased airstrikes by government forces as well as fierce ground fighting between the opposing forces.
The World Agency is calling for a full investigation into reports of mass killings of civilians based on ethnicity. If the allegations are proven, they could be deemed war crimes. It's now been 5 years since the worst terror attack to ever strike France. Somber ceremonies were held in Paris today. France's prime minister, along with other dignitaries, laid wreaths at the sites of the rampage. On November 13, 2015, 3 groups under the banner of the so-called Islamic State attacked the Bataclan Theater, cafes, and the National Stadium. 130 people were killed. 350 were injured. France is now under high alert for terrorist threats. There have been 3 attacks by Islamic extremists since September, which killed 4 people. Up next, as the pandemic worsens in Europe, is there still hope for the holidays? India is illuminated with dazzling displays for Diwali. The 5-day festival is usually the biggest holiday, a time to mark the triumph of good over evil. It's celebrated by Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists worldwide. And one city ignored COVID-19 restrictions to keep its Guinness World Record for most lights. Thousands of volunteers lit over 584,000 oil lamps. At many malls across this country, the magical in-person experience with St. Nick will be replaced with a virtual visit from Santa's headquarters in the North Pole. That's one holiday tradition taking on a twist in 2020. The Prime Minister says the way Canadians behave now will determine how we can celebrate Christmas. And there's a similar sentiment in Europe, whereas Redmond Shannon reports there's no guarantee of getting home for the holidays.
No one does Christmas quite like the Germans, but this year one traditional market is more about cars than carols.
Was gibt's denn?
Welcome to the drive-through Christmas market.
Besser geht's nicht in solchen Zeiten.
This is as good as it gets when everything else is closed, says this man. A similar situation in London is dampening expectations for celebrations.
And I want as many Londoners as possible to have a Christmas, although not like any other Christmas they've had before, but one that's semi-decent.
The promise of a semi-decent festive season is a deal that much of Europe will have to accept right now. The hope is that these November lockdowns will be the key to making that happen.
Notre objectif est de pouvoir. But France's Prime Minister says it's still too early to be booking any train tickets.
I think in terms of people booking flights for Christmas to come home, I advise them not to do that at the moment. I know that's difficult. I know that's tough.
A similar message in Ireland.
I mean, I'm going to be swimming home if that's what it comes to. I can't see them banning travel. It's not going to be illegal. They're not going to be arresting people at the airport. So.
Immigrant Ina Quinn says many people will travel, no matter what governments say.
It just seems pretty wild that there's no plan in place. You know, there's a matter of weeks to go now, so it's just really frustrating.
In Canada, the holidays will also be different, but at least one thing has been guaranteed by BC's top doctor.
I think Santa probably has immunity, and we'll look at how we can facilitate him. I think he'll be washing his hands a lot, and he probably won't be eating cookies and milk in every house this year, but we'll find ways of making it work.
We're unlikely to ever forget Christmas 2020, even if some of us will want to. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Robin Gill. We leave you tonight with the snow on Cypress Mountain in British Columbia. The popular resort reopened for the winter season today. Of course, there are pandemic safety measures for snowboarders and skiers. Thank you for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.